Hey guys, obsessed. They are obsessed. Who is they, you may ask? The media, of course. The media. Yeah, just the media in general. But they are obsessed with the idea of Zion Williamson packing his bag in New Orleans and never returning until it's an away game with the New York Knicks. Because, let's not forget, there was that one time, of course. There was that one time where he said he likes New York.
New York is the mecca of basketball.
And if we've learned anything in NBA history, it is that whenever someone says they like New York and Madison Square Garden, they end up becoming a Knick. So when he said that, it was pretty much confirmed that he wants to leave New Orleans. Now you might be confused as to what this video is about. Basically, over the last few seasons, there's been a lot of talk about Zion Williamson not wanting to be in New Orleans, why he shouldn't be in New Orleans, why he should go to a big market, and it's just getting out of control. The final straw for me was when an article came out saying David Griffin had a midlife crisis, thought he was the second coming of Mozart or Beethoven, and wanted to play the piano for him to rectify the relationship. That was when I was like, okay, this is getting out of control. Because if this is fake and you're making up stories like this, where do we stop at this point in time? If you're going to make stories about David Griffin playing his little piano for Zion, bringing him into his suite and getting the grand piano out, if that doesn't stop it there, then it won't stop until we talk about the Pelicans and Zion and this whole narrative around why he needs to leave. It's getting ridiculous. Now, I'm not going to go all the way back, and I'm not going to spend all my time talking about these past narratives because I want to talk about some other things in regards to the Pelicans and Zion going forward, but we can take it back a couple of years. Let's take it back to even before he was drafted. Before he was drafted, there was already talk about, well, everyone, ESPN, every major news outlet was annoyed that he didn't get drafted to the New York Knicks because he had to go there, right? Brian Windhorst came out and said he might skip the NBA draft, go back to college to avoid going to the Pelicans. He might skip the NBA draft and go back and do college again just so he doesn't go to the Pelicans. Max Kellerman said the Pelicans were not just a bad team to go to, they were the worst team. The worst team. It's not like teams like Cleveland and these other teams, not to throw them under the bus, have struggled for a long time apart from when LeBron James was there. But it was the Pelicans who were the worst team. Of course, he could skip college. And, like, in general, why did he not go to the Knicks? Because at the end of the day, why have parity in the league when you can just rig the draft and send every generational talent to the biggest market available because they've been inept for 20 years and deserve that big market player? So that was kind of the basis of these narratives around Zion Williamson and him leaving the Pelicans. And I want to talk about a few of those. Before I go any further, I guess if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, that would be much appreciated. Cool. But in general, as I said, this has been going on for a while now. But it's only been 2 years, which is ridiculous. It feels like it's been half a decade that I've been listening to these narratives about Zion and the Pelicans, but it's only been 2 years. Well, a little bit longer because, as I mentioned, it was happening before the draft. They were trying to get him out of New Orleans before the draft. I can't emphasize how ridiculous that is, that they suggested he could go back to college. Brian Windhorst, shame on you. Shame on you, because that is just foolish behavior. And if we were to just look at a brief timeline of where this kind of started, looking back at year one, he came in, people suggested he was overweight, he wasn't fit. Part of the article, Christian Clark, which I'll talk about in a bit because he's the guy who spawned the David Griffin, piano, Zion, egotistical, I don't know, all of these bad things. He spawned that. I'm not going to go into the whole article because I'm not paying for something that seems kind of not real. That's what I'm going to say. I'm not paying for that, but he spawned some of that. And, well, yes, it goes back to the bubble where apparently he wasn't happy with how he was being treated and how he was being managed, which there's probably some truth to that. That's fair enough, because if he was given a timetable and the timetable was extended, that can be frustrating, for sure. And I understand there's probably some truth to that. There's also truth to the fact that Donovan Mitchell just last year in the playoffs had the same thing happen and then it blew over in the matter of a game. So anytime you win, it doesn't matter. It's just the fact that the Pelicans haven't been able to win. And also, I'm not going to give the Pelicans an absolute clear pass. They haven't done all the right things. David Griffin hasn't been great. No, he's been far from that. But at the same time, have you given them much of a chance? No, because you've been trying to get him out of there since day one, since before day one. And it's gone through the narratives of year one where he wasn't fit, he wasn't healthy, he didn't want to be there. The Pelicans, he came back from the bubble and he wasn't exactly healthy, which I'm pretty sure it was an injury, which is the reason why, and he was overweight. There were those narratives. And then there was year two where there was the family members that came out and said Zion doesn't want to be in New Orleans, or they're not happy with how New Orleans are going. This was from, I don't know, a Twitter page, an NBA Twitter page. I didn't see any reliable sources. If you want to trust Twitter journalists, then go ahead, but I'll wait for, I guess, Woj or Shams or one of those guys to report, because I didn't see anything reliable. It didn't come from Zion himself. And again, it was just another kind of narrative being built by the media to try and get Zion out of New Orleans. And again, as I said, this is all fine. This happens all the time with small market players. That's just the reality. Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, how many times have they supposedly wanted to get out of their organization within the first few years and nothing formal has actually come out? That happens all the time. That's going to continue to happen till the end of time, because that's the reality and that's just how things work. But it comes to a point where it's getting ridiculous. With year 3, Christian Clark, as I mentioned, wrote the article for NewOrleans.com talking about David Griffin, Zion, a relationship that was fractured, and how Big Dave himself, got out the piano and tried to serenade him or play him a recital. I don't know what he was trying to do, but it was some kind of form of a midlife crisis / trying to keep in contact with your son kind of thing. It was strange, and that was what came out, that Zion didn't want to be in New Orleans, that he wasn't talking to any members of the team, he wasn't talking to David Griffin, that he wasn't really associating with the team, which, in fairness, is somewhat true. Again, there is some truth to some of this, because the reality is there's probably a lot of truth to this in a lot of players. As I mentioned, Donovan Mitchell just last year in the playoffs had a run-in with the physio and the medical team with the Jazz and used his own medical team to get back to health. He wasn't happy with how they were dealing with him. It happens every damn year. Just the fact of the matter is, people aren't as desperate to see Donovan Mitchell out of Utah as they are to see Zion out of New Orleans, so there's not an article or a video about it every other day. But there is some truth to it. He came back and apparently he has a fractured foot, which no one knew about, which I guess, in fairness, you also have to say this is someone who is very private. He doesn't really post on social media. He's not very outspoken. He doesn't talk a lot. So his idea and what he said about him just keeping to himself and not wanting to really alarm any of the team members or the staff or anything of that nature, you can see some truth to it. I could see how that would happen, because he is someone that you don't hear from much, regardless of whether things are going well or things are going bad. And I don't know if that necessarily means he hates New Orleans or he doesn't want to be there or he hates the playing group, which is kind of what was being portrayed a little bit, and he wants out. No, it is slightly strange, and he is injured, which is something to keep note of. He also looks huge, as you noticed by, yes, the intro that I did. He does look big. His shoulders are 4 times the size of mine and 4 times the size of pretty much anyone in the NBA. And they're professional basketball players, and what are they? They're boulders. They're insane. So he looks big. Some people are saying he's overweight, he's really fat, which we've heard it all before, and he went on to average 27-7 on elite, incredible, all-time efficiency. I wouldn't say he looks that much more overweight than last year. He looks heavier, but does he actually look fatter? I don't know. We'll leave that for another day. And ultimately, I probably should have mentioned this earlier in the video, but a reason why I'm actually kind of disappointed in these articles and this news coming out is because I believe the Pelicans have actually done a pretty good job in rectifying some of those mistakes they made last season. They brought in Stan Van Gundy. That was just never going to work. It just wasn't. They brought in Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe. These were bad moves. But they've rectified some of those moves. They've got in a young head coach in Willie Green who is pretty liked all around the league, or is liked all around the league, and looks like the kind of right hire to bring in for a young team. Brandon Ingram looks like he's got stronger and looks like he's ready to take another leap. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jackson Hayes, if all things are good for him on his end, I believe he'll take another leap. Brought in Jonas Valanciunas, who ideally, still defensively, there are some question marks over this team, don't get me wrong, but ideally, spaces the floor, stretches the floor, is just a much better player than Steven Adams at the end of the day. They've brought in Trey Murphy III, who is ready to play, ready to make an impact. If you can't trade those picks, you bring in rookies that are ready to play, mature age rookies, and that's exactly who Trey Murphy III is. So they've made the right moves, in my opinion. Did they have a blockbuster free agency? No, I believe they had a nice, solid free agency, which isn't enough for all this negativity around the Pelicans. That's why I've been a little bit disappointed, because I thought maybe year 3 there'll be some positivity. These guys are still young, they're still looking to build. Sure, this is a big year, because if they have another losing year, regardless of whether some of these stories are very exaggerated or whether they're actually true in the slightest at all, there will start to be a lot of pressure. If by year 3 they still haven't made the playoffs and they fire another head coach or David Griffin's gone, then you can definitely start to wonder if Zion's going to be in New Orleans. But until then, let's give them a chance, because this is a new team and it looks like they've finally made the right move. So let's not come out with articles talking about how David Griffin is playing the piano and how this is just a complete rabble before the start of the season. Again, that foot injury wasn't great. I'm hoping that the Pelicans can get back on track, this season, because I have a lot of hope in this team. I've invested in this team. I believe they're going to finally click it this season, which is what I'm hoping. Zion being hurt won't help, but either will these articles. Let's just settle down. It's ridiculous.